Oh yeah, music. This was my favorite Tupac song when I was a kid. Cry like what? What do your adversaries cry like? When it's most needed, right? Has anyone ever heard that song? No, that wasn't your jam? They played Gangster Party on the way to work today. Snoop's in that one. Do you remember that guy? He does stuff with Martha Stewart now. So, but yeah, Tupac was huge for me. See, we're trying to go through stuff that came out when you were kids or presently. But I went back and I went through stuff that I listened to as a kid. And this is before websites that would actually tell you like the real lyrics, and lyrics weren't always on the inside jacket of the CD. So a lot of times I was just doing guesswork with lyrics. So I've got some like funny lyrics in my head for a lot of songs, especially ones that are like you can't quite hear. They didn't enunciate properly or something like that. So I went through on my own. I was going through two of my favorite songs as a kid, which is Sublime's Santeria and that song, Tupac's Can't See Me. So I was like listening to them and like trying to analyze the lyrics, and it was frightening. And it was also interesting how similar the lyrics were, because Bradley Knowles, the guy from Sublime, the kind of stuff that he's saying, it's kind of the same thing that Tupac is saying about, you know, how to be a feminist. Anyone ever go back and listen to those? Or, sorry, listen to those for the first time and you're like, dang, this is interesting. Let's just get into it with, we're a little short, right? Is this the ozone layer depleting over here? Yeah. First, let's talk about the Hitler reading. What'd you guys think about that? What was the whole point of this experiment?
To see how far someone will go, in the sense of like, I guess, not torturing someone, but obeying.
There's tons of applications, right? Yeah. In obeying what?
Authorities.
Authority. Yeah, in obeying authorities. Why was he wanting to do this experiment?
To see if Germans were like as obedient, like.
Yeah, this is 1961 published. This was published in 1963. And so the study he'd been thinking about probably for a little while, because something had happened, 20 years prior, 39 through 45, World War II and the Holocaust. After the Holocaust, there's a whole bunch of people on trial for war crimes. And what was their number one excuse? Yeah, I was just following orders. That's the number one excuse. So how do you explain that, right? Like an entire nation is on board, pretty much, except for, the outliers. But for the most part, an entire nation is on board with blaming all of their problems on a specific people group. There's some other stuff. It's not so flat, obviously. We don't want to make it into a cliche. There's a lot of things going on with World War II. Pretty much after World War I, we saddled Germany with all the debt of the entire world. When I say we, I mean America, because America, after World War I, everyone owed America money. All our allies owed us money because, manufacturing and supplying things for them, right? The thing is, so they're all in debt after the war, but the loser should have to pay, I guess. So they take all the debt of all the world and they put it on Germany, and then Germany falls apart. More than that, because not only did they lose a war, they also are now having to pay for the entire thing. The money got so bad. You want to talk about inflation? So our money, you can see through the years, once we went off the gold standard, our money is worth like way less than it used to be worth, right? You can see whenever they mint a gold coin, it says 1 ounce of gold, $50 US on it. They mint it like that because that's what it was. So it's 1 ounce of gold. How much is that worth now? Is it worth $50? Can you really buy that for $50? No. It's worth even more because it's minted. But how much is just 1 ounce of gold? It fluctuates, but $1,400 to $1,600. But it used to be $50. So you can see when older people are like, I used to be able to buy a cheeseburger for 5 cents. It's like, true. Yes, things have gotten more expensive because our money's worth less and less. You raise the wages, you raise the price on things, and it just keeps going over and over because it's not on a standard. So what happened to Germany is their money ended up being worth so little that right after you got paid, you'd start getting paid every single day because the money was so inconsistent in its value. They started getting paid marks in, like, their money was called marks, right? Not dollars. And they'd just like get it in wheelbarrows at a certain point, and they were just rushing to the grocery store to try and buy stuff before the prices went up even more. So it got unbearable for them, and then they all unite over certain, ideologies. There's a lot of things going on, ideas of eugenics. You guys know what eugenics is? Seeing what your dog looks like? Your dog wasn't supposed to look like that. We made it to look like that. So eugenics is like taking the same way that we breed dogs to look a certain way as doing that with humans, right? So there's all that going on. They became a little bit more prosperous when they're united, but the problem is the ideologies that they're united under. But everyone is down with this. I mean, it's pretty shocking to see how many people were just like straight up murdered in horrible ways in the Holocaust, right? It's not just like we're shooting each other and that's how we die. It's like you enslave people, you work them until they're about dead, and then you gas them. And you separate, children and mothers. You guys all did reports on this stuff, yeah.
Or you like die and experiment with them.
Yeah, or experiments. See, that's the thing. There's been a lot of experiments around since that time, since war times, right? And then after that, even the Cold War, even though we weren't technically at war, because of the fear of war, we were doing tons of experiments, and we like to blame all the horrible ones on the Soviet Union, but there's some crazy ones that we've done ourselves, and it's not just like dropping acid on a person like every day for a year and then their brain being like a baby's even though they're an adult. Malleable, right? Where they'll just believe anything you want. It's more than stuff like that. It's more like, how about this experiment where you try to figure out how language is created, and so you take a whole bunch of babies and you only feed them and change them and you don't speak to them and see what happens. So it's weird. You can't find the name of this experiment, but you can find video footage of it, like the legit experiment actually being done. You can find that on YouTube. And it's not the Soviet Union who did that one. You know what happened to babies?
They developed their own, couldn't they communicate with each other, but there was no way for us to communicate with them?
So no, that was going to be the point of it.
I remember learning in psychology that if they're not exposed to language, they can't learn it.
Yeah, so we talked about, so we can bring this up whenever, right? Remember? This. The first thing you do in your life is you mimic, apart from crying, right? Yeah, the babies died. Yeah, they started dying like crazy, and then they're like, okay, we need to stop this. But yeah, if you don't have interaction at all, then there's nothing. The babies just became catatonic and then died, wasted away and died. It's a horrible thing, right?
So where did they get the babies from? Like who?
Probably orphans.
Do you know what that's from?
No, that was the whole thing, right? I kept looking for it. It sounded like a conspiracy theory to me, and so I kept looking because I was only finding it on Reddit pages and crap and blogs from totally uncredible sources. And then I find straight up video footage of the thing, and it's not like weird doctored fake. It's like some old legit experiment that they did, like government funded experiment, and there's no information because you just deny that you even did it. At that point, governments will just, we don't know what you're talking about. Back to this one though. This one is really interesting. So he goes and he wants to see how obedient, what's up with Germans? There must be something wrong with Germans for them to be so obedient. Because it's obedience to authority or your own conscience, right? To see when people will actually deviate and rebel against it because they feel that it's wrong. How did that go for him? Because he was going to take it to Germany. Did he ever get there? No. He got as far as Bridgeport, which is not that far from Yale University, which is where the first one was done. So what were his findings?
A lot more people agreed than thought he was.
Yeah, frightening amount. That it wasn't just Germans that were obedient. It was everyone. It was Americans at least too. And so he didn't have to take it any further. And it doesn't seem like these were the results that they wanted or the results that they thought they were going to find. But the thing with this is an old experiment. Like I said earlier too, you could go and watch it to see, like, you know, there's a ton of footage. He recorded everything he could, so there's even more than just that. You can hunt for it, all the details. You can see, you know, what the jobs of the people were. Probably you can find all that stuff if you wanted to, like, go into it. You were fascinated by this study because it's pretty significant. But it doesn't mean you have to believe what he says the outcome is. I mean, you got to think through it yourself, right? And you got to see there's so many variables that could change what went on here. So I think the most important thing for us to do first is figure out what are the variables, like what were the most important things for him to be able to come to that conclusion without overreaching. And then still, even if you don't come to that conclusion, there might be a different conclusion or something similar, but like a little bit different that maybe you guys come to dealing with the same data, right? Because we have his data, we have all his information. What were the details of the experiment that were essential for him to be able to come to these conclusions?
Well, the fact that it happened like in an enclosed space.
Okay.
I feel like it would have produced a different result if like it would have been out in the open in public, like the Germans. Other people were watching them.
Okay, so being watched, that is important. So when we say enclosed and we think about like controlled experiments, yeah, what are the controlling factors that you would need to have in place to make sure that this went like that?
The learner wasn't like just another person, it was like someone else hired to be.
Yeah, you pretty much isolate every variable, everything that could skew your findings, and then you let the other one be open to see what it does, right? And so the teacher is actually the one. How do you guys like that? Putting someone in a teacher role and then like screwing with their head, experimenting on them like this, like psychologically. So a lot of stuff involved here. You still didn't say the variables that are important for him. Like this is brilliant in how they control it, right? The faking the person out, thinking that they're not the only one in the experiment. They think that this other guy's in it with them. That changes the psychological process of a human. What else?
Choosing what position you're going to be.
Yeah. So thinking it's just by chance, right? Yeah, that's important.
But like on that part, didn't it say that both of them had the same?
Yeah, so the actor, he says, oh, I got learner, but they both said teacher. That way, no matter what, that guy would get the teacher role, who was the actual one being experimented on.
The fact that it was being done at Yale, like a prestigious and trustworthy
Yeah.
institution.
And that's why they move it off for other iterations of it. Yeah, they have it at Yale at first, and it's like that's prestigious. That's an Ivy League school. And then they move it off to Bridgeport, just in town. And they say that the results didn't change too much, though, so that was weird. But it was a little bit less. That's true. That's an important factor. What else?
The person that's participating, you would think, well, I would assume that somebody who's at a very prestigious school is a little more intelligent and open-minded, and like they'd probably be more aware to realize that something's wrong.
Are you talking about the people in the experiment
Yeah.
or the people controlling the experiment?
The people in the experiment, like I would think that.
Like to trust them or?
No, I would think that because they're more intelligent, they might be more aware of like to realize that something's wrong with what they're doing.
Yeah.
Rather than someone who might not be as educated.
You're right. But who were the people that they picked? Did they just pick students from Yale? Yeah, they put out an ad in the paper and they were getting random people from town. Although they did kind of guess and estimate the people who were trying to get their degree or possibly already had their degrees in psychology were estimating how many people would go all the way or only partially and stuff like that. Those guys did weigh in on it, but it wasn't part of the experiment. It was more like to try and guess what the outcomes would be first. What are parts essential for this thing? Yeah.
And they're in separate rooms.
Yeah, so they're in separate rooms. What else?
They had to show like the person participating that the voltage was like continued to increase.
Yeah, so walking them through that, did anyone watch any of the footage too? So in the footage, they walk them both back there, and so this guy gets to see. So if this guy is the teacher, this is the scientist, experimenter, and then this is the teacher. He's watching this guy, the learner, get strapped in and walk him through the stuff. So he sees the setup in the other room, but then they go back out, and then this is one part that I actually forgot. They give him a shock. So now he knows what a low-level shock is like. So he says, now don't look, I'm going to give you a random low-level shock, and I want you to tell me how many volts you think it is. And so he gives them the shock, and he's like, I don't know, like 75 volts? And he's like, that was 45. So he's already thinking, at least this guy right here, he's already thinking that that's a little bit more than I thought. What else? How about the shocks themselves? How about what's on there? Is that important for the person to think about? They're controlling all the variables for this person so that they have very little they have to think about in this process, and it's trying to push them towards either one or the other, right? You want to make sure that there's no other excuse they can make pretty much in this. So what does the person know? Is it that they just, I don't know anything about electricity? So they've already gotten a test shock. They've already seen the setup in the other room. What does it actually say on the circuit board? Slight shock, intense shock, dangerous severe shock, and then the very last one, it just says XXX, which is not telling you that there's a strip club close by or anything like that. See, when I was a kid and there was a cartoon on and there was like XXX on something, it meant poison, or like this is lethal. So like it would typically be on a bottle of something, and then they drink it, and then they die, and then they'd float away with wings or something like that, right? That's the kind of thing, and everyone knew that. Did you guys even still kind of know that because you maybe have seen old cartoons? Yeah, so that's on there, right? So it even says danger, but then what's important here, because the experimenter is telling him something else?
No, we told him that it wasn't gonna be too painful.
Yeah, so he's telling the guy it's not dangerous. None of this is going to be dangerous. But the machine itself is saying dangerous on it, and even an indication of possibly lethal. And he already has a physical experience with the shock, and he can deduce, right, if that was 45 and it goes up in 15-volt increments, and I'm up in the 400s here, you need to be able to use your brain for this. Yeah.
Doesn't the learner mention that he has like heart problems?
That's the other thing. Then there's that. We've got the learner in the back room. He's like, well, one more thing. I do have a heart thing. Now, do you guys know, what do you think? Is electricity good for your heart when it's already running? No, it's not good for your heart. Anyone ever been shocked? And then your heart was just like, that's the whole point here. Where is this guy in the whole process? This guy in a white lab coat. Yeah, he's like right there in the room with you. And so each time one of these guys says something, what's the other thing that starts happening as they're shocking the guy? Yeah, there's responses like, oh, that really hurt. Did anyone look up any of these responses or watch them in the video?
Let me out of here. You have no right to keep me here. Let me out. Let me out of here. Let me out.
Continue, please.
Let me out of here. Let me out.
Go on.
Let me out.
Red.
So, like, the guy in the other room, he's like, you have no right to hold me here. Let me out of here. And they're saying that stuff. Now, even though the person turns and they're like, oh, do you hear this guy? They're like, please keep going. The experimenter guy in the lab coat keeps pushing. He says it's essential that you keep going. Now, do they have no other choice?
For the most part, we're taught from a young age to like obey authority, like in school, work. So he sees him in the lab coat, he assumes he probably knows what he's doing. He knows about this.
There we go. And so that's part of it, and that's why maybe this would go differently nowadays. Do we respect authorities the same way we respected them in the early 1960s? No, we don't. In fact, anyone who goes on WebMD thinks that they can tell their doctor that they're full of...
They were told before the experiment happened that they were already being paid,
and that they can leave at any time they want.
Is that important? That's absolutely important. Right at the get-go, the money is already yours. You can leave whenever you want. So when they keep pressuring them, it sounds like they're contradicting themselves, but the whole point is, if they aren't pushy with the person, then that person doesn't have an excuse, because what keeps happening is, even the people that go all the way, they're like, I don't know if I should keep doing this. And then the guy says, it's absolutely important that you keep doing this. They're like, I'm not going to be held accountable. And then the experimenter's like, no, it's on me. I'm the one who's accountable for this. And then they're like, okay. And so they keep going. And so even if the guy, this poor guy in history, this one they spend most of the time on now, he's just the one that they focus on for this video. But, you know, he keeps talking to the authority and he's like, I don't feel right about this. But then he keeps going, and there's this point that it gets to where they're all the way to the top. The learner isn't even responding anymore at all. So it sounds like he could have passed out from pain or died in the other room. He's like, I don't know what to do. He's like, just keep going. We just have to keep going until it's over. He keeps going, and then they finally stop the experiment. They're like, we're just going to have to stop now, because he hit this disconnect where he just isn't thinking anymore, and he's just doing his job, and it's frightening. And then they try to explain to him afterwards, and they ask each of these people questions, but afterward you can tell each time they ask him this question, he's not getting it, and they keep asking him in more explicit ways to try and get a real answer out of him, but then it's like he's not even understanding the question at all. He doesn't want to admit any culpability. They're like, why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you say no? And then he goes back to answering something completely different about the guy complaining in there and how he felt bad, but he could have gotten up, and he acts like that was not even an option at all. Disobedience was not even an option. And you could probably go in and look into the details. Like, I don't know, they didn't say what job this guy had. Maybe he's ex-military. Maybe the people who were in military or the people who were not in military maybe were more or less obedient. Who knows? But it is interesting to see where this goes. And it's scary, because so long as they have someone else that they can put it on, some of these people keep going. How many people did they guess were going to do this?
3%.
Yeah, like 3% were going to go all the way through, and they're probably thinking those are psychopaths, right? And then how many people went through with it all the way, you said?
Yeah, Bridge 40, 65, I know.
So the first time here, like 65, and they freak out, right? They're guessing. They thought it was going to be like not even close to that, and then they're like, we must have done something wrong. Then they keep going. They keep modifying it. They even change it where the guy's in the room with them, to the point where the guy's in the room with them and they have to hold the guy's arm down at a certain point. So they're torturing him, and they don't even realize it.
And even with the ones that were in like another room, even the ones that did get up and leave the experiment, like either halfway through or whatever, they never went to go check on the other guy. They just left.
Yeah. They did it a whole bunch of times. They wanted to see, what were some other variables. They also did it where the experimenter themselves was in the room like this, and then this is the most popular one they did, and then they did it where he was not in the room, talking to him over phone, and then they did it where it's just plug in a recording, and the less that the authority figure was in the room, the less obedient they were also. That variable factored in too. So it's really interesting. Yeah, if you want to go back and watch this, there's tons of stuff that's been written on it too, and trying to go back and look into all the variables, other offshoot experiments and stuff like that. But like you guys were saying, so this was early 60s, and authority figures were pretty black and white. Someone who's a doctor. Doctors were authorities that you don't question a doctor. They could do all kinds of stuff, and you just got to trust them, or you would just trust them because they know best. They're the experts. Anyone who is in an authority position, police officers, right? And then now, is that different? Yeah, we question everything, or we like to think we do. So those kinds of authorities we question. Who would you say then are our authorities? If we switch this to, how does this go? Yeah. All right, so we've got this. How does this play with authority? Who do we look to as our authorities in our lives? It's not the people who are, by law, set as authorities anymore.
Parents.
Starts out as parents because they are the authority. They can ground you and they can do all kinds of stuff. And plus, you love and trust your parents early on, right? You're not doubting anything they're saying. Maybe at some point you realize that they've lied to you, and that creeps in, you know? Easter Bunny, Santa Claus. Oh no, did I? Yeah, stuff like that. Or maybe they pull this one on you because I said so. Right? And you already start to see flaws, and you see the cracks and how they're not perfect, and that you can't trust everything they say, and that everything they ask you to do is not, like, you don't see the justification for it, and they don't really explain it, and so you start to rebel. And then plus there's other people. You start spending more time with other people and looking to other things as the model, and then that kind of becomes your authority, doesn't it? In a way? Like, what is peer pressure then? You know? You've got your friends that push you to do stuff or encourage you to do stuff. There's different ways that happens, right? There's feelings that you get or pressures of, like, fear or wanting to be liked. That's all, I guess, going back to fear, but wanting to be liked, wanting to be accepted, wanting to fit in. And so we will go along with stuff that way. Anyone ever bullied someone? You've never bullied someone.
My own brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys don't want to remember this. I remember bullying someone. I remember I got kicked out of my mom's house when I was 15, and so I went to live with my dad, and pretty much, like, everyone was bullying me from the beginning, and so I got picked on a lot. People tried to start fights with me, and then I remember one day I walked in a class, and this kid, he was wearing the same shirt as me. And then rather than, like, high-fiving him and being like, cool shirt or something like that, I was like, flip it around. Flip your shirt inside out. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, flip it inside out. I was going to, like, beat him up over it. And then this bigger kid hears me, and he's like, you flip yours inside out. And then I'm just like, oh, in front of like a whole bunch of people. So me trying to be hard, right, ended up backfiring, like, immediately, and I felt like the biggest piece of crap, and I didn't even get away with the thing. It was great. It was so great. I'm so thankful that happened to me. But it's so weird, like, in my head, because we always want to look at ourselves as the good guy, as the protagonist, right? But we oftentimes, like, that stuff happens. There's got to be one point in your life where you were not thinking about the other person, you were thinking about yourself. Even if it's just, like, why do bullies even bully? They bully because they're trying to take attention off themselves, right? Make fun of this kid so that you don't have to see my insecurities and see me crying because my dad beats me at home and this is the only way I know how to deal with crap, or something like that. Oftentimes they have it worse anyway. So there's a lot of factors. There's so many factors, and we don't have to go exactly with Milgram's conclusions. There are some variables that could still throw it off, but it does say something about humans. We have to admit that they're obedient in some way, but, like, what is the reasoning for it, and how does this all factor in different areas? Like, for us, our authorities are... I've never looked at teachers or cops or anything like that as authorities growing up. I was into punk rock, and I thought I was an anarchist, even though I'm pretty sure I bought an anarchy sticker, which defeats the purpose, because now you're going with the system that you said that you're against. If you don't steal an anarchy sticker or make it by yourself, right, then you are a poser. I'm not telling you to steal, by the way. Anarchy is not actually a good plan. But there's something here. It was pretty interesting, right? The other studies that have been done where we saw that babies being able to stick out their tongues and mimic the person, right? That's real. They talked about the gaze. How, well, whatever they're looking at, that's what this person ends up liking particularly. I mean, how do you get that kind of stuff, right? Where did I get my love for punk rock? I remember my first punk rock CD was Operation Ivy. It's like ska punk, kind of. And I remember my friends, they're like, no, this is the CD you start with. Like, you should get this one first. I got it, and I spent $17 on it. And when I put it into my Discman, without skip protection. This is before all of that. When I put it in my Discman and turned it on, I was so pissed off that I spent $17 on that thing. I was like, I just threw away my money. That was like, I've been saving that for like a month. And then somehow, a week later, it became my favorite band. So where does that come from, right? How does this play out? And so, I mean, it's up to you guys to figure this stuff out. A lot of it goes back to an argument for, this is all the work with the reasoning that you have to build for why it's influential or stuff like that. So we've got this concept tabula rasa, which is Latin for what? Blank slate. This goes back to Aristotle, but it was made popular by John Locke. You can write this stuff down if you want, unless you already know it. Aristotle, he's the guy who kind of discovered Western logic and categorized most of the fallacies. Pretty smart dude. But then John Locke comes along and he really develops it out a little bit more. But the idea is we start out with no knowledge, right? What do we start off with is the thing. These concepts come up of nature or nurture. Yeah? And this is gonna come back like all over the place. Sorry, I kind of did it in a bad spot there. Nature or nurture. And so the proponents for this are that it's all about nurture, right? Like almost everything about us comes from nurturing, comes from what we mimic, and then how we build our identities from every single experience and interaction with other humans and things that we learn as we grow. But then there's other people that would say, no, there are things that are innate that we start with, right? So you can already think of quite a few things that come into play here. So a couple people come after him. We've got John Locke, and he's like, yeah, this is good. And then we've got Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And so he pretty much, even his ideas on parenting are stuff that we still use today. This is the Enlightenment at this point, though. This is, he's a little bit before, but it's the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, bringing back of these ideas. And so Rousseau, his idea was, yeah, blank slate a bit, but what is our nature, though? Is it just that we have no knowledge? We do have drives, right? He thinks that we're born good. He thinks that we're corrupted by the world around us. That if the parents would just ease off of discipline and stuff like that, we would grow up to be good. What are some things around us that may tell us differently than that or agree with that? What are some other ideas? What is the context that he's working in? We've got religion and science that are developing here. Religion's been around for a while. Science is now, this is the Enlightenment. They're starting to, develop facts and ideas, philosophies that are working towards what the human condition is and everything like that. So religion would say what? Evil, right? So Christianity, Catholicism, maybe Judaism, because we have in Genesis, we've got the fall, right? So humans fall. And so from that point, you were born in sin. You are born a sinner, and your drives are to sin. There are some religions that are different than that. Like in Islam, it's the same kind of thing as this, that you start out good and it's the world that corrupts you. What else do we have? We've got science. And science would say, well, how about once we get to evolution? What are you born with evolution-wise? Who survives? The fittest? Yeah. What are your drives? What drives do you have as a human to survive? What are those drives? Yeah. Yeah, eat, sleep. So we talked about these things, the things that you need at the bottom of Maslow's pyramid, right? So you need those things, even the reproduction thing. That's why that was at the bottom there, because you even have a drive, you have urges for that stuff too. Babies. We mentioned them a bit, right? When they're born, they cry. And then also in that video that you guys watched last night, they talked about you pretty much don't know anything other than to cry, right? That's the only thing you're not mimicking is the crying. And why are you crying? because you're either uncomfortable or you're hungry, which is you're uncomfortable. So we've got these drives. What are these drives like, though? Let's say the baby cries. Baby doesn't care that the mother hasn't slept at all that night. Baby's just going to cry no matter what. The baby is not concerned with the mother. The baby is concerned with the baby. Let's go forward till like 4 years old or something. You've been, your baby's growing and they understand things, right? Like, let's say rules. Like, let's say no cookies before dinner. But your child is ingenuitive and they climbed on top of the chair and they got to the cookie jar and they ate a cookie, and they ate a cookie because they walk over to you and they've got chocolate all over their face. And you ask the child, "Did you eat a cookie?" What's the child going to say?
Yes.
No, the child's going to say no. Self-preservation. Well, if they already know, but normally they're so oblivious, right? They don't even know that the chocolate's on their face still. They're going to lie. So not only did they steal, they also lied because of the self-preservation instincts, right? So it's funny how evolution and religion, at least for Christianity there, and some of those other ones that are on the same page as the fallen nature, is if you look at sin as a selfishness thing, then they go hand in hand. And so one of my arguments is that a lot of the times when we think about evil, we think about it in this like pure sense of like evil for the sake of evil, like the Joker in Batman The Dark Knight, and he just like does it for the sake of doing it, for the sake of evil. I would argue that that's not quite a real thing. Like even Satan in the Bible, he's doing something because he's selfish, because of pride, because he wants this thing, right? And so it's a side effect of screwing over other people or looking down on other people in order to get something for yourself. So evil ends up looking more like selfishness all around us, if that makes any sense. But that's just a possible interpretation of it. You could still say that we start out good, but it's really hard to when everything else is telling us that we don't start out good, that we start out selfish, and we actually need to be taught what is good and bad. I mean, you don't need to teach a child to steal. You don't need to teach a child to lie. You do need to teach them how to lie and steal well, right? That's what they learn from the world around them, how to do it better. But the mechanism to do it for self-preservation is there, right? They're going to want to do that. They're going to want to flee from, does a kid walk into like a spanking? They're like, "Oh yeah, let's do this. I love spanking time." When they get older, right? That's something way later. I don't think anyone starts off masochist. It's normally when you've gone through trauma and abuse as a child and then you start like plucking your eyelashes and stuff. It's like, "Oh, well, let's talk to your parents because someone's probably been..." Yeah, anyway. So these concepts, I know it sounds weird for us to talk about, but I think it's kind of important when we start thinking about who our authority figures are now and how impactful it is on us. So who are our authorities now? So YouTube. Where do you go to learn things now? And did you actually learn anything in high school? Like from school, from your teachers? Kinda, right? School's like whatever. You go to school because that's where your friends are. And you pay attention to your friends. I remember just like being so busy trying to hit on girls in the middle of class, it didn't work at all. But I was so concerned with that or being funny that I wasn't learning anything. Yeah, there was some other things too. But that's the thing though, like we're so concerned with other stuff. What we end up learning from, what you probably learn the most from about, and we're talking like anything, right? Maybe you learn from parents, but think about all the things that you've learned how to do. Where'd you learn how to do your makeup? YouTube? Where'd you learn how to use a butterfly knife? Does anyone know how to use a butterfly knife? No? Okay. Anyone have hobbies like that? No? Math problems. Yeah. I mean, anything that you even maybe needed to know from school, or the ending to that book so you could pass the quiz, or like, yeah, the Cliff Notes video. Somehow they put all that stuff up. Wonder why I don't teach novels anymore. Yeah, what else? What else did you learn from YouTube? How about how to interact as a human? No? Well, this is the thing. Does anyone here watch vlogs? What's the purpose of a vlog?
Live through someone else's life.
So live through their life, but it's weird because they're talking to the camera and they're going in, especially vlogs where they're just doing nothing. Like they're just doing their normal everyday stuff. They're just walking around and they're trying to make the most mundane thing exciting or something like that. It's like they're your friend and you're like learning how to interact and be part of a group of people. It's really weird if you think about like what the heck the purpose is of that. And you look up to these people, especially if you follow them and they put out stuff like consistently. Right, like every day or Monday, Wednesday, Friday. David Dobrik, I think, does that. Yeah. You know who that is? Yeah. We'll go there later. So there's the kind of people that we go to for our model. Any influencers, maybe? YouTubers, right? Who else? Celebrities, yeah, sure. Anyone try the Thor workout or the Wolverine workout? Or the, I don't know what the workouts are right now, but I remember when I was younger, my friends were like, oh, you want to go do the 300 workout? 300 was a movie with like Gerard Butler, and they had like spray on six packs and stuff like that. They weren't even real. It's all CG. Like they come out with a workout so that you can look like the person in the movie. Oh, did anyone learn how to work out from YouTube? Maybe? Yeah. So celebrities, absolutely. Celebrities have their own Twitter, their own Instagram. You follow them. You hear what they have to say. You see what they're doing. You model your clothes and your mannerisms even maybe after them a little bit, even if you don't want to admit it right now, but you might see that you do that. Models, sure. I mean, models don't really talk as much. Sometimes they do. Who else? Friends? Yeah. Boyfriends, girlfriends, yeah. Who else? Ooh, so even, what about the characters in the books? Yeah, fictional characters. I used to want to be Wolverine as a kid, even like second grade. I remember looking in the mirror and I was like, I kind of have the same hairline as him. I wonder if I try really hard, if I can become Wolverine. It didn't work. I don't think I tried either. I don't think you could try. You can't try that. That's also not how evolution works, just in case you were wondering. Mutations don't cause you to get like cool claws and like healing factors. Normally, mutations are something that screw you over.
Like Deadpool?
Yeah.
And like
Not like Deadpool, because he still had it worked out good for him in the end, kind of.
the X-Men?
Yeah, you don't become an X-Men. You become life expectancy of 20, and you have hair on your ears or something like that. And maybe an arm coming out of here and a third nipple. And cancer. Yeah. What else?
Music artists.
Yes. Musical artists. Let's do this. Artists. There we go. Oh. And that's where I was trying to get to. Like, there's philosophy coming out of music. Like, it's all over it. Like, even if it's cliche, there's still tons of philosophy. So much going on, whether it's how to live your life, or what success looks like, or how to get over a relationship, you know, believe in yourself. You're beautiful. Don't let them tell you otherwise. Sorry, what's the Christina Aguilera lyrics? You don't know? It's too old, right? You were in diapers? Whatever. How about this one? Were you in diapers when this song came out? No, this was like just a couple years ago. So, what'd you think? This was his breakout song. This is what made everyone like him. Yeah. So, what is the message here? We'll just read it and then see what you think. There might be multiple messages, so you just tell me when you think we got to one. I pull up, roll the window down, and pop, 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 pop. I pull up, roll the window down, and I pull up, roll the window down, and pew, 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 pew. I just bought a pistol. It got 30 rounds in it. Pull up at yo mama house and put some rounds in it.
Wow.
What does that mean? Did he pull up to the guy's house that he has beef with?
No.
He specifically pulls up to the guy's mom's house. Sure, the guy might live there, but he's calling it the guy's mom's house, meaning he knows the guy's mom is probably there, meaning he doesn't care if he kills the guy's mom. You think that's cool? You think that makes him one of the biggest pieces of because I know people who don't want to screw with him. They think he's hard. So one way that people get a rep for being hard, Tupac got shot 5 times. Says, shot me 5 times, but you punks didn't finish. Now you're about to feel the wrath of a menace. That's why I shoot him up, or I hit him up. 50 Cent got shot 9 times. Yeah. And so that made him look hard. So what happened to 21 Savage? He got shot. That would seem hard to some. That would also seem just completely normal. And wow, you're lucky that you survived that to other people. He takes it and runs with it. And so now he's hard, right? Did he explain in that video interview how he became like that?
It was hard to watch.
Was it?
He's an idiot.
He lived in like this neighborhood that was like really like kind of
Gangs and stuff.
yeah.
What did he say about being a blood?
It's like a fourth team.
He didn't even know what the significance was at all. It's just like whatever, you know? So why is this something that's to be looked up to? Because people model themselves after this idea, right? You think that he's the beginning of it? Like Tupac and beef between Dr. Dre and Eazy-E and Ice Cube and any of those guys who were pushing that thug image. Even Ghostface talks about it on one of his songs. He says, "Don't keep Jack in my lap. I don't want to see Tupac," referencing like when someone would like run up, jack your chain and steal your money and stuff like that.
It's really similar to how people in Mexico, they look up to like cartel people in the
Yeah.
cartel and they make music of it and they end up idolizing them just like how
Oh yeah, if you listen to like Mexican rap, it's like it's pretty bad.
yeah.
Huh? You never heard that? You never heard any of it? It's horrible. So think about it, right? Because even in impoverished nations, if you want anything, you have to take it. When the authorities are corrupt and when they're not administering justice properly, then it gets even worse. Then you make your own form of justice, and it's might makes right, typically. When we decolonized the world pretty much after World War II, Britain and pretty much like all the other Western European countries, you know, France, Belgium, Portugal, Spain, America, like we were all in these other countries and we decolonized, meaning like we left them so that they could run themselves. But what we did was we pretty much, rather than like helping them set up governments so that they could run themselves well, we didn't let them set up governments, and then we just like left all at once, like even till the end. Getting out of their country and letting them take over was pretty much in hopes so that they would call us back when shit hit the fan. I mean, look at Uganda, look at all those countries in that area where they're all run by warlords and drug lords, and they like enslave children and turn them into soldiers and make them kill their parents and horrible stuff like that. That's what the result was. You leave a place and you don't help it get an infrastructure so that they can run themselves, they end up just might makes right, and then it becomes this miserable thing. And so here, yes, it's not that bad, but we do have the authorities that people look up to. This is someone who people look up to. In fact, you watch H3H3, right? Does anyone have any critic YouTubers that they listen to? Okay, there's that guy. He's pretty popular. I think he's got like 9 million subscribers. That's pretty big. There's this one guy, Cody Co. Has anyone heard of Cody Co? Him and his buddy Noel Miller, they'll criticize some stuff. So Jake Paul did a video where he did a drive around with 21 Savage, and somehow, you know, 21 Savage's manager like set that up, and it was really awkward to watch. But they did not talk trash on 21 Savage at all during their criticism. And it was really weird because why would this guy have so much credibility or so much clout that they'd be so afraid of him? Are you afraid of this guy? Like if I had you on video right now talking trash and we put this on the internet, titled it College Class Diss Track on 21 Savage, would you be afraid?
The people he has influence over.
Would you be afraid of those people? What do those people look like? How many of them are there? I mean, no, people like him. People respect him. This is the thing. They respect him. How do you respect that? Pull up at your mom's house and put some rounds in it. I'm going to shoot up your mom's house. Does he kiss his mother with that mouth? Does he tell his mother he loves her with that mouth?
Yeah, in the interview he said he loves his mom.
Yeah.
His mom told him saying that she was proud.
Yeah. Tupac put out a full song about how he loves his mom, but then in like every other song he's talking about bitches. First rule, watch for phonies. Keep your enemies close. Watch your homies. Second rule, get your cash on MOB. That's what? Money over bitches because they breed envy. Yeah, this is Tupac's lyrics right here. I mean, it was significant. He talked about it all the time. Even Suge Knight got a ring that says MOB, all in diamonds, of course. He doesn't call women. He calls them bitches. And, I mean, he also calls guys bitches, too. But it's still, like, the whole thing has just been developing more and more. And this is like, I mean, I think he talks about having sex with someone's girl here. He also talks about how to cook up crack. Detailed enough where you could figure out how to do it. Do kids listen to this stuff? Yeah. My next door neighbor kids, there's a lot of them, and one of them has a backpack speaker thing, and he sits on the block like he's slinging dope, but he's not at all. But he's listening to this kind of stuff. Every Saturday night, there's multiple parties going on, and there's like mariachi over here, and then there's like really bad 80s over here, like Two of Hearts bumping, and you're like, what is that crap? No, that's bad. And then there's someone playing Snoop and Nate Dogg. It ain't no fun if the homies can't have none. No, you don't remember that one? Guess who's up in the house with the... Yeah, very loud. We're talking like 12 midnight, 2 in the morning, them playing this so clearly heard that I can hear it over my TV saying, and she even, does anyone know the line? Don't say it. Talking about how to like run a train on a girl at a party, and this is what you should be doing with your homies. And these kids, if I can hear it, these kids who go to sleep at like 9 because their patriarch in their house tells them they need to, they're definitely hearing this while they're like supposed to be sleeping in their beds. Also, if your kids have a babysitter that's a tablet, typically, can you really stop them from watching any of this stuff? Whoever they're looking to as their mentors, they're typically on a screen. All that being said, it's crazy because then when you look at 21 Savage and why he became how he is, like what did you think of that? Did you think that like he had even really thought about it enough? Nah. Do you like his cross on his forehead?
It's a knife.
It's a knife. Wow, man. And he got it.
Tribute to.
Yeah, but his brother just got it because it looked hard or something, right?
Get tattoos together.
Yeah, you would think when you get tattoos, especially something that's going to be the first thing people see, that it better be really important. Like, talk about what you stand for, right? Do you guys see the significance of this? Because let's say you don't let your kids listen to this. Or you do. Some parents, they'll listen to this kind of music in the car. Maybe it's not him, but maybe it's Cardi B. Or maybe it's anyone else who's a little bit less kill your mom and your babies and your children by shooting them in drive-bys. Within the past, 10 years, I think a couple kids have died on my block or in the surrounding blocks, just maybe 10 houses away. And
Where do you live?
Are you okay?
I live in East LA.
Oh.
Yeah. East LA. It's not East LA, it's a little further. There's a bit of a sprawl happening here. I mean, I thought it was getting better, you know, when all the kids started wearing tight pants and then like they weren't vatos anymore, but as they grow up, maybe they're getting into it, because what gets you into it, right? Where does that come from? Who are you looking up to? And when your parents or your dad isn't in the picture, or they don't care enough, they're just like, here, just watch this, just watch something, you know? And then you use that as the babysitter, who's really the person raising the kid. Maybe you stop them from watching and listening to this stuff, but what about Jake Paul? Who's Jake Paul's audience? Do you know?
Like 8 to 12.
Yeah, so maybe your younger siblings. Do you think his music sounds any different?
No.
If you could call it music, he calls it music. What was the one where Logan takes Jake's ex-girlfriend and what's...
I could ride your girl.
I could... Yeah, I could ride your girl with no handlebars. Nice. And then Lil Tay, how old was she?
She was fake, like her brother made her go.
That's the thing, right? Where do you get that from? The influence is real. It's totally there. And the authority, when that person is looked to as an authority, it becomes that much crazier. People watch that stuff. People like that stuff. And you like it for humor, but then this is the thing. What you laugh at, you're watching it. Someone else is watching you watch it. Your model looks at that thing but doesn't explain to you how they're looking at it. The kid that's growing up, the subject, growing up looking at that thing, maybe they're looking at it as the thing that they should go to and look at and like. Kids will be like, oh, that's how I'm supposed to be. Jake Paul is teaching your children how to grow up. Rice Gum is teaching your children how to grow up. When you are old and decrepit, the people that are going to be taking care of you, changing your diapers, are going to be people that Jake Paul raised. Are you afraid?